In 1997, Marvel's experiment, called Heroes Reborn, ended. It was, in some ways, a success. The cancellation of 4 of their longest-running series, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Iron Man, and Captain America, and the subsequent hiring of outside talent to relaunch those titles, brought them attention and money. In a lot of ways, a direct editorial line can be drawn from the Reborn books to the Marvel Knights line, to the Ultimate titles, to the creatively isolated volumes of today. Love it or hate it, the Reborn books were the spark that would eventually change Marvel Comics. But that flip side was there. People hated the Reborn books, largely because they were terribly uneven in their execution. After all, having 2 books produced by Wildstorm Studios and 2 books produced by Extreme Studios, which were then published by a third company, namely Marvel, in an age when the internet was only beginning to gain widespread usage, could not have been easy. Constantly shifting creative teams on the Reborn books certainly didn't help things either, nor did a very vocal fan base. Since the moment that Marvel pulled those characters out of their universe, fans were demanding their return. The status quo must be put back, right? Change in comics is only temporary, after all, for better or for worse. So Marvel took the Reborn books out to the woods and put them to rest in Heroes Reborn: The Return, or episode 1.13 of this podcast. If you're interested and you haven't listened to it before, it's pretty good, you should check it out. And everything was set right. In 1998, Marvel relaunched their 4 missing titles in a publication event called Heroes Return. Now, the Heroes Return label isn't meant to indicate a crossover of these 4 books as part of a storyline. Rather, it's more of a unifying theme, a reset of these beloved characters and concepts. In fact, these 4 titles wouldn't cross over again for years, the soonest being the Live, Kree, or Die event that ran through Iron Man, Captain America, Quicksilver, and the Avengers around issue 8 of their titles, but it was issue 10 for Quicksilver. As with the Reborn titles, I bought the first few issues of all of the Return books, save for Captain America, because I thought he was lame. Gotta get those first issue collector's items, he says, looking at the $3 cover price of the worth $4 first issue of Fantastic Four Volume 3. Hey, that's better than Maverick is doing, at least. But I never got that far with any of these books. At this point in time, I would have been buying Uncanny X-Men and X-Men while grabbing whatever other title grabbed my eyes. Any issues of Iron Man or Avengers that I got was mild flirtation at best, but I never bought past issue 1 of the Fantastic Four. That means that this run is generally unfamiliar territory to me, and like the Fantastic Four, that's my favorite territory to explore. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.1, Fantastic Four Volume 3, No Place Like Home. It's even nice to have the theme music back. The return of the Fantastic Four, the return to our regular format. What a serendipitous series of events. Anyways, issue 1 of Fantastic Four Volume 3 was written by Scott Lobdell, penciled by Alan Davis, inked by Mark Farmer, and colored by Liquid. Lobdell's name was my other big draw to this particular issue when I was a kid. While I really wouldn't follow creative teams until I started reading cross-gen comics in 2000, Lobdell was a name that I recognized. He had been writing Uncanny X-Men and Generation X since I started buying comics, and I love his work there. Astute listeners may recall that Lobdell also co-wrote Iron Man Reborn for roughly the first 5 or so issues. He was also one of the few talents to bridge both the Marvel Universe and the Reborn universe. Lobdell largely focuses on character drama-driven stories, another thing that I loved, so I figured that it would be likely that I would enjoy this book as well. The issue opens deep beneath the Earth's surface, where we find the Mole Man enjoying a hot springs bath. We met the reborn Mole Man during Fantastic Four Reborn, where he ruled Monster Island. This version of the Mole Man rules Subterranea, an underground land populated by a variety of monsters and moloids. Moloids are... well, actually, have you heard of the Greys? That classic gray alien that probes people up the butt? Moloids look like that, except yellow, and they wear loincloths and sunglasses that the Mole Man makes to protect their light-sensitive eyes. Anyways, Mole Man dons his classic green jumper with cape and popped color combo, he is stylin', and greets his army. Hundreds of Moloids stand amassed, armed with spears, high-tech armor, and a few of them are riding monsters like war steeds. Like their ruler, they are eager to wash over the surface world and accomplish their ruler's mission of total domination. A messenger runs up from behind the Mole Man, holding out a parchment. News from the surface? The Mole Man snatches the sheet as his followers watch with bated breath. He gasps. They're back. Now the crowd gasps. And no swearing! Flees. The Mole Man isn't even upset as he watches his army disperse. Yes, he says, that is exactly what he would have proposed. No sense storming the surface world. Not when it has the Fantastic Four to protect it. The Mole Man sits down upon his throne of stone and picks up a goblet, raising a toast to his respected adversaries, his hated foes. The camera pulls out as he does, revealing that the balcony on which he sits rests above massive, carefully carved stone faces of the Human Torch, the Invisible Woman, Mr. Fantastic, and the Thing. Ruling the world wouldn't be nearly as satisfying, the Mole Man says, if he didn't get to crush them in the process. I love this opening. Right away, Lobdell and Davis are telling us a lot. They are telling us, first off, that this book isn't going to take itself too seriously. The build to the Mole Man's army, and then their absolute terror at hearing of the Fantastic Four's return, is super funny. I also think that it's important to note their usage of the Mole Man here, who is not only a classic Fantastic Four foe, but a Fantastic Four specific foe. We're going to have new bad guys later in the issue, but this opening isn't about what's new. It is about what's old, like this villain, like his plans, like his respectful hatred of the Fantastic Four. The return books aren't simply about dropping their characters back into the Marvel Universe, they're about harkening back to the old days of comics, when superheroes were bright, colorful, and fun. Sure, they can address serious topics and be mature, but they can be silly, too. We also get headshots and names for the Fantastic Four, so if a reader wasn't aware of who they were, or skipped the guide that is inside the fold-out cover, they now get a nice introduction. In the southern polar region, which is Antarctica, right? Why didn't Lobdell just call it Antarctica? We find Benjamin J. Grimm, a.k.a. The Thing, wearing skis and something on his back. It looks like a massive rocket engine, and he doesn't look too happy about it. A holographically projected head of Reed Richards lays out the situation, which I will summarize. The device on Ben's back draws power from the Earth's polarity, so being by one of its magnetic poles, in the virtually unpolluted conditions of Antarctica, are the most favorable conditions to test it. Ben is less than thrilled. We pull out, revealing Ben standing on a cliff face, the pristine, flat snow and ice stretching out before him. He protests, but only weakly. Ben complains because he is a complainer, and as Reed begins the countdown, he smiles and puts on his goggles, eager for the test. Before the device can start, though, the Human Torch flies between Ben's legs and melts the cliff. Under the weight of him and the device, the ice breaks, and Ben slides down it. Somehow he manages to stay on his feet, thankful that the device never started. Of course, that's when it does. The device thrusts Ben forward like a rocket, sending him skipping over the landscape like a stone over water. The Human Torch pulls up alongside him, pretending to be a cop, but Ben grabs one of his arms. The pair roll in the snow and, in classic cartoon fashion, are rolled into a massive snowball. Directly in their path is the Fantastic Four's camp. Reed Richards' attention is fixed on his device, fascinated by the readings that he's receiving. Sue, his wife, has their son Franklin on her hip, and the pair use binoculars to watch their family roll towards them. Sue tries to warn Reed about the oncoming danger, but he's off in science land. So Sue puts up an invisible force wall with a hole in the center. When Ben and Johnny hit it, they are shot out of the hole, dumped into a pile of snow, and Franklin laughs the entire time. The two men pick themselves up, bickering, and eventually Sue hoists them both into the air. How could they ruin Reed's experiment, or endanger Franklin because of a prank? Reed then scoops up Franklin, declaring the experiment a success. He puts Franklin on his shoulders and rushes inside their tents, eager to study the data. Outside, Sue swears in frustration. I love this scene. The Fantastic Four, at their core, are about family and exploration, and this really showcases both. From the dark, stony lands of Subterranea to the pristine whites of the bottom of the world, the Fantastic Four can and will go everywhere. And wherever they go, they are a family, picking on each other, relying on each other, so familiar with each member that Sue doesn't really expect Reed to listen to her warning when she says it. She just acts, protecting him and her son. This scene also serves to establish everyone's roles, both in the family unit and as a team. Reed is the father, the brains, the reason that they're in Antarctica to begin with. Ben is the sturdy test pilot, still supporting his best friend, no matter what cockamamie scheme he has now. Johnny is the impulsive brother, trying to have a good time regardless of what it ruins. And Sue, of course, is the protective mother, defending Franklin and Reed before giving Ben and Johnny an earful. And the scene is funny, consistently setting up an expectation, then subverting it, as the authors did with Mole Man. This is fun, lighthearted. Again, it is a return to form so well executed that it can't be argued against. Around the globe, though, an argument is taking place. We move to Paris, France, where protesters haunt a dig site. We meet protesters Yvette Diamond, Laurent Levasseur, and Hervé Dubois, who are protesting a company called Deterrence Research Corporation, or the DRC's, presence on French soil. A representative of the DRC, Aaron Starr, meets with the protesters. The DRC feels that they have legitimate concerns and has sent Starr to assuage their fears. He offers to give them a tour of their find, and they accept. An hour later, Starr and the protesters reach the end of the dig. A large stone door, maybe 4 stories tall, sits in an empty chamber. A carved, monstrous face sits above it, while 2 arms go down the side, ending in open, clawed hands. Starr explains that this ruin has been carbon dated to over 11,000 years old, and the runes that adorn it have no match in known history. Without the DRC, mankind may never have found this incredible link to its past. Yvette can certainly appreciate the uncovering of this past, but really that's what concerns her. The DRC and mankind in general are so focused on moving forward that they're willing to destroy whatever came before. Starr leaves that kind of thinking to philosophers, and he has to, as he's interrupted. A DRC worker informs him that they're ready to breach the chamber. Starr is pleased, and Yvette is horrified. This is what she means. You make this amazing discovery and then you destroy it so that you can move on to what's next? These ruins should be protected and studied, not burned through. She charges forward, kicking at the laser in an attempt to stop it. Laurent and Hervé and the DRC workers start to brawl. and the laser continues cutting. They fight until a burst of pressure blasts from the door, followed by a glowing green light. The ever-eternal debate of preserving our past or pushing into the future. Well, an almost always appropriate line of thinking for how mankind deals with the natural resources of the world, or our own historical artifacts. It is also on point for this era. It is also on point for this era of the Fantastic Four. Marvel moved the Fantastic Four, and others, to the Reborn universe in an attempt to do something new, to test a new way of making their comics, but in doing so, they also removed those characters from their history. Must mankind invalidate the past in order to move forward, like the Reborn books did? Or can we honor the past and be inspired by it, but still move on, as the Return books aim to? It's fascinating stuff. Back in Antarctica, the Fantastic Four are preparing for dinner. Ben is the grill master, and Sue checks in on him asking if he needs help. He then goes on a rant, recapping how ludicrous and strange their lives have been regarding the whole Heroes Reborn thing, including the fact that their home, the Four Freedoms Plaza, was occupied when they got back. He's clearly a bit stressed and maybe angry, and I like that Lobdell not only sums up the Reborn storyline, but gives us some feelings about it. The returned heroes move on so quickly from their ordeal and settle into superhero business as usual that it's easy to forget that they're people, that they just relived their lives in a pocket universe made by a child literally discovering that their existence was a lie, and then return home to find that home isn't there anymore. Things, as always, have changed. The heroes may have returned home to the Marvel Universe, but they aren't home yet. Sue smiles kindly at her old friend and holds up a tomato and a head of lettuce. She meant, did he need help with the salad? God, no swearing. Love this. The expression on Ben's face alone is gold. As Sue begins to prepare the salad, she also does her best to comfort Ben. Yeah, all of that was strange, but when compared to everywhere else that the Fantastic Four have been or seen or done, is it really all that different? It was just one more adventure. But for Ben, it was. He got a fresh do-over of his life, and he still chose the series of events that made him an orange-bricked monster. The answer to that question is easy for Sue, though. That's because Ben is a hero, like he always has been. Hell yeah, Sue. Elsewhere in the complex, which I thought were tense, but I think they're like a TARDIS situation, bigger on the inside, Reed, Johnny, and Franklin are tinkering with the old Fantasticar. The looks like a bathtub with a 4 on it Fantasticar. And Johnny asks Reed if he can give it a 90s-style makeover. And this is important. He doesn't ask for a makeover, but a 90s-style makeover. Reed responds, in bold font, quote, "Image isn't everything," end quote. You can't tell me here that Lobdell isn't taking a dig at the Reborn books. Marvel gave their properties to two of the founders of Image Comics, who are known for their influence and rise to popularity in the 90s, for a makeover. Reed then continues, quote, "I would have thought that the last several months had taught you that sometimes there's no improving on the original concept. If something works, you stay with it," end quote. Reed just no swearing and smoked the whole Reborn line. Dude's motherfucker no swearing and going for the damn throat, no holes barred. GTFO, good sirs, have a nice day. Which I find ironic, given that Lobdell worked on those books too. They chat for a bit more, but I'm barely into the meat of this issue, and we still have a ways to go, so I'm gonna pick up the pace a bit. A device in the lab beeps, indicating that there is a breach in the dimensional wall. The Fantastic Four prepare for action. That breach is in Paris, where green mist fog stuff with screaming skulls inside of it pours out of the door. The mist skulls dive into the bodies of those around Yvette, but not her. She watches in fear and confusion, ducking and hiding as the green energy glows bright and then fades, revealing people. Laurent, Herve, and Star have been transformed. Laurent is now Exalt, a muscular man with gray skin, a body wrapped in leather straps, with crackling blue energy coming from his hands and head. Hervé is now Debar, and his shoulders, neck, head area, right hand, and lower legs are covered in stone. His left hand is free, covered in orange energy. He holds a sword in the right hand, hilt out. Star has become Stem, with a very thin frame and a very oversized head. A green stone rests in his forehead, while a bone and cloth apparatus holds the rest of his head mass up. 2 bone struts occupy both of his hands, supporting his weight. Stem explains that the beings they were are now gone, replaced by themselves, a race called the Ruined. About a half-dozen other Ruined surround them, although they're peaceful enough. Yvette recoils at the monstrous appearances of them, but Stem assures her that they're here to help. The Ruined, trapped in another dimension, have watched Earth careen towards destruction and longed to help. They agree with her, and they would ally with Yvette. Yvette likes the sound of that, but what does that mean? Debar holds out the sword. All Yvette has to do is take up this blade and lead them. She hesitates, but only for a moment. Yvette draws the blade and, in a flash of green, is transformed. We don't get to see that transformation yet, though, because we need to catch up with the Fantastic Four. Reed and Sue, in disguise, visit the DRC protest where they meet, I love this is super cute, European comic star Tintin. He's there for the protest and to tell them about the situation, like Yvette and the others going to the dig. The pair slips into the dig as well and ditch their disguises. Reed has been tracking the breach and now hypothesizes that, for whatever reason, new materials are being replaced by old ones. We're shown a metal railing transforming into old marble to illustrate the point. The Ruined then appear, just briefly, before we cut to Johnny and Ben. Johnny is loving Paris, naturally, as he kicks back at the Champs-Élysées, while Ben sulks in a trench coat. A supermodel recognizes Johnny and flirts her way into a date, not that it's very difficult to do, and Ben leaves to give the kid some happiness. He ends up wallowing in self-pity, until some kids throw vegetables at him. They taunt him in French and he runs them off. Clueless as to why they chose to bother him, he walks off scratching his head. Above him, a street sign identifies the road he's on as Rue de Yancy, or Yancey Street. Remember Reed saying that you stick with what works? That's this scene. Johnny falls for a beautiful woman, or she for him, and Ben sulks and is teased by punks from Yancey Street. The Thing's annoying relationship with the Yancey Street gang goes all the way back to Fantastic Four issue 6, and it is a staple of Ben Grimm's life, even when he's across the Atlantic Ocean. Both men's night is then interrupted. A tree-like growth grows from the DRC dig site, cracking into the street above. The protesters flee, Reed stretches an arm through the opening and fires a flare, then summoning the team. As the Human Torch and Thing arrive on the scene, that makes slightly more sense. That tree-like thing that I was confused about is actually a temple. The structure is growing out of the dig site and is getting larger by the second. The pair find Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman battling the Ruined, and they join in. Mr. Fantastic explains, and then the Invisible Woman dumbs down, that the Ruined are trying to turn our reality into theirs, and that is reason enough for the Thing to clobber them all. He turns on one of the Ruined who was behind him, but then stops before he can hit them. It is Yvette, looking like herself, except nearly naked, wearing bone armor and some red cloth, the sword that she drew held in one hand. Yvette states that she and her allies are fighting to save the world from itself. They are in the right here. The Thing, is just happy that he didn't punch a lady. Yvette chastises his condescending attitude and then punches him straight into the Cathedral of Notre Dame. With all of the brawlers sufficiently brawling, we cut to Stem, who is watching all of this with glee. Soon, his plan will be fully enacted. If this guy had the capability to rub his hands together and still stand up, he would be. But Mr. Fantastic has noticed him and pops in over his shoulder. The fight is a distraction, right? To buy time for the transspatial energies to engulf the world, yes? Stem protests and stabs at Mr. Fantastic's body with his cane, but Reed covers his mouth with one hand and literally shushes him. He does some plotting to his literal plot device that's in his hand, revealing a glowing green portal following Yvette around. And this surprises even her. What is that doing here? Exalt explains that the portal is tied to her blade, the Blade of Sacrifice. Quote, "For the great cleansing to be manifest, one must be martyred." End quote. And Yvette is like, "No swearing. I did not sign up to be martyred." So Mr. Fantastic tells the Invisible Woman that they need to overload the portal. She's like, "Yeah, I got this. I'll hurl some debris into that thing. Johnny's got crowd control. We've done this kind of thing before." And this is the one moment in this comic that I outright dislike. Sue specifically says that Reed has been out of the loop for some time before they were reborn, so he might not be used to how the team grew in his absence. This is true, as Reed was presumed dead from Fantastic Four Volume 1, issue 381 to issue 407, which was published 4 years ago at this point. So 1, we're referencing a plot point that happened ages ago, we are over this, and 2, while this does serve to reaffirm that the Fantastic Four and their title are back in continuity, it also shows how weird this transition is. The Fantastic Four now remember everything that happened pre-Reborn, plus the events of Reborn, but this volume is treated as a fresh start for everyone. But how fresh can this start be if we are playing with character concepts from 4 years ago? This is a level of adherence to continuity that bothers even me, because it detracts from the story that I'm currently enjoying. So the Invisible Woman shoves some debris in the hole, it closes, but only for a moment. So then the Human Torch shoots his fire into it, hoping to disturb what is a fragile energy matrix. But the portal just absorbs his flames, draining him dry. He begins to fall into that portal, but Yvette saves him. She pulls him to safety. After all, her only wish was to save the world, not destroy everything in the process. Things are looking pretty bad to Mr. Fantastic. At this rate, the portal will consume the whole world. Paris is transforming more and more, except for the Louvre Pyramid. Something clicks in Mr. Fantastic's mind. He's got it. But Stem mind blasts Reed. He won't be stopped now. Yvette then tries to reason with Exalt/Laurent and Stem. But Stem is quite happy to invade Earth, and so far, his plan is working like a boss. Quote, "There was only one thing on all this Earth that could close the portal. You are not that thing." End quote. And that's because the Thing is standing behind him, lifting the steel and glass pyramid above his head. Mr. Fantastic praises Ben quickly, launching into a semi-nonsensical explanation about how the triangular harmonics will allow the portal to close, and all Ben needs to know is to hurl the pyramid in the portal. And he does it. In another flash of green, the portal closes. Paris and those transformed are returned to normal. Except for Yvette, she's still clothed in the armor of the ruined, armed with the Blade of Sacrifice, and is super strong. Why, though? Whatever the reason, Mr. Fantastic is intrigued. Maybe she would like to accompany them, and he can run some tests for her? Star, now returned to his old self, argues that idea. The sword and subsequent armor were found on a DRC dig. That makes them DRC property. If anyone gets to study them first, it is they. Reed points out some archaic law as a counterpoint when the Human Torch butts in. Look, if anyone harasses her, they go through me. Got it? Star backs off.
But Yvette doesn't go with the Fantastic Four. This whole experience has served to exemplify her point. Meddling with technology, however altruistically, can have dangerous consequences on the natural order. She says that whatever power she has been given, it is up to her to decide how to use them. She wishes the Fantastic Four well, and leaves. The Fantastic Four then meet with French authorities to explain what just occurred. Reed laments being unable to study Yvette, but they had no legal ground to hold her. Plus, the Fantastic Four were once transformed against their will, and that's worked out pretty okay. Starr returns, cursing Richards for a fool. Does he not realize the scientific discoveries that they could have made studying that woman? Reed glares. He knows that science without morals is a disaster waiting to happen, as Starr should have learned. The Fantastic Four board the Fantasticar. As they begin to leave, a crowd of Parisians has gathered. They chant out, "Vive, vive, vive le fantastique!" Long live the Fantastic. If you couldn't guess, I really dig this issue. Alan Davis is an artistic master, a storyteller in his own right. And he was put on this book specifically because his style has a clean look about it. Whether it was on Excalibur in 1987, X-Men in 1999, Uncanny X-Men in 2004, or the Fantastic Four in 1998, his style has remained the same. It is classic. It is timeless. Able to convey depths of emotion, intense action scenes, alien landscapes, or the streets of New York. Or Paris. This isn't a book that is inspired by the grittiness of 90s artists or guys like Jim Lee or Rob Liefeld. This is superhero comics at its most pure, and Davis is a great fit to accomplish that. The Fantastic Four are written well, in character throughout the issue. They feel familiar, which is great, falling into established roles quickly and easily. Reed feels the least developed here, as he's generally lost in the science of his works, but that's also Reed. The Ruined are an interesting choice of villain for a new volume. When I was a kid, I remember being pretty excited for them. I love strange character designs. I love hidden societies. This was right up my alley. But they're just so bland. They have no personality to them at all, and they don't do anything. Stem has the largest role here, and that's literally to stand around and gloat evilly until he ends up defeated. Yvette is almost the most interesting character because she is empowered by the Ruin, but unhappy with their overall goals. But even she doesn't really do anything. She never has to choose or learn that the future needs to be progressed toward while the past is being protected. She just kind of stands around until the Fantastic Four save the day. I am intrigued by her remaining empowered, and I would love to see more of the Ruined and their society or dimension at some point. We will eventually cross their paths again, but it isn't going to be for a while, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Perhaps more important than their character, though, is what the Ruined represent. They are the past, and an adherence to their ways would totally destroy the present. The Fantastic Four represent the future, people who have been changed by science defending the future. And this story represents the careful balance that mankind must walk between those two roads. We should honor the past, yes, but we must use the lessons that the past taught us to move forward and make all lives better. But we can't move forward so quickly that the past is thrown away, either. Kind of like tearing four beloved franchises out of one universe and into another in order to make a quick buck on an untimely inferior product. Heroes Reborn. Thinly veiled critique. I would say that a problem with following old patterns is failing to produce anything that is noteworthy, though. Even having read this issue before, when I started to do this write-up, I didn't remember any of it. Not the character work, not the Ruined, not the overall plot. I had nothing. That makes me ask, if you're engaged in a book that is returning to form, but that form is, honestly, cliched and forgettable, then is that a form worth returning to? Issue 2 returns us and the Fantastic Four to New York City. The team is currently staying at one of Reed's storage warehouses, and they're having problems adjusting. This is demonstrated by Ben and Johnny trying to sit on a high-tech couch that Reed designed, and this act overloads the couch, causing it to shift, grow, and envelop them. The reason for this is because New York City gifted the Fantastic Four's old base, the Four Freedoms Plaza, to a new team of superheroes in the Fantastic Four's absence, who are called the Thunderbolts. Recent developments in the Thunderbolts narrative has left the plaza unlivable, and so this is their improvised home for now. While Ben and Johnny wrestle with the chair, Franklin begins to get close, and then it starts to adapt to him, continuing to morph uncontrollably, and then Sue has to step in to protect him. The Scio-Tactile chair prototype finally explodes, coating everyone in gray goo, and Ben and Johnny are done with this. This is stupid. They want their home back, and they are gonna get it back. They storm off, heading towards the door, but they find the door swinging open, revealing a shadowed figure. Is this the new home of the Fantastic Four? Ben pauses. Who wants to know? The figure pulls back their hood, revealing a mane of fiery red hair. This gorgeous woman is Billy, their mail person, and this is her route, so she'll be delivering to them daily. If they actually do live here? Ben and Johnny are immediately smitten. Oh yeah, this is totally where they live. I mean, where else would they live? Like, come on, like, home is where the heart is, you know? The pair offer to help her with her load, giving Reed and Sue a moment alone. If their mail is being delivered here, Sue reasons, then Reed has already notified the Postal Service about that fact. And Reed says, yeah, sure, we do live here. It was a perfectly logical decision to make. But it wasn't a decision that the team made, Sue stresses. When they're in the field, yes, they don't mind Reed taking the lead. But this is their private lives, their home, and what they wanted needs to be considered. Reed apologizes for making the choice for them, but it was a good call, yes? As Reed, Sue, and Franklin leave the scene, a figure in some kind of cloaking field watches them go. Ooh. This opening is a good scene setter. That comedic tone that Lobdell and Davis introduced last issue remains true, with the Fantastic Four struggling to battle Reed's sci-fi chair. The character voices are consistent, and they felt right. Ben and Johnny crushing on Billy is pretty cute and humorous, and it distracts them so that Sue and Reed can have a more serious talk. But Reed totally misses his wife's point, more focused on being right than on considering his family's emotional well-being. And that's still in character for Reed, but I hate that Sue lets it slide. When he continues to press the point about being right, Sue just sighs and agrees, and it totally undermines her own point. We then bounce to Empire State University, where we meet Kathy and Joe, two students working on their degrees. They're in a lab where a monkey rests inside of a clear box. Kathy says that his white cell count is rising, but he looks so sad. Joe tells her not to worry. They're going to be doctors. They can't let their emotions sway them. She just needs some rest. They leave for the night, and the monkey sits up. The fools. Soon they will be but dust beneath their paws. Yeah, alright, sure. If there's one threat I can't take seriously, it's monkeys. Enough of that. Elsewhere in New York, Ben has journeyed to the East Side, where he's looking at an old sculpture of himself that was done by the sculptress Alicia Masters, who is also an old girlfriend of Ben's. He really should let her know that he's, alive and stuff, but what'll he do then? He is still a monster, and she is still too good for him. Damn it, Ben, you're a great guy, and you are thick as fuck.
No swearing.
Have some self-respect, man. Alicia loved you once before. She could do it again. She actually can't because she's over in the Silver Surfer's book, an editorial note tells us, but I'm trying to build Ben back up here. We'll tell him about that later. So then Johnny shows up looking for a wingman so he can pick up some chicks. Ben can't believe that's what he is up to right now, but it's true. With Ben standing next to him, Johnny will look even more handsome. Ben growls and they start walking. Johnny changes things up here. To be honest, he doesn't really know what to do. Before the Fantastic Four died, he had just reconciled things with Lyja, his ex. But, since she is a shape-shifting Skrull, she could be anyone, anywhere in the world. And if she doesn't find him, he may never find her again. Ben wraps an arm around Johnny's shoulder. He assures them that things always work out for the best. Johnny folds a hand behind his back and fires a small blast of flame at a snow pile above Ben's head. Then he dances away as the snow collapses on Ben, taking him completely off guard. While he's stunned, Johnny pulls a carrot from his coat, completing Ben's new snowman look. Ben shakes free, pissed off, and he starts chasing Johnny. Johnny, in turn, flames on and gains a lead, shouting for Ben to lighten up. As someone who has always sympathized with Ben, this scene can feel really cruel. Ben pines for a love that he's lost, and here comes J-Boy talking about picking up girls and making fun of men. But I don't think that Johnny does this in order to be mean. When he tells Ben to lighten up, he isn't trying to escape the payback for his prank. He is literally giving Ben advice in the only way he knows how. Johnny sees one of his oldest friends in the world hurting, beating himself up, and over what? His looks? The Fantastic Four are famous, and Ben has found love before. He can find love once again, if he would just lighten up and stop clinging to this moody, depressing, oh-so-serious wallowing self-hate that he does. So, he pulls Ben out of the funk by making him mad at Johnny instead of sad at himself. Of course, Johnny could try a more honest tact too, as his mention of Lyja does pull Ben away from his problems and causes him to sympathize with Johnny. Funny, too, how Ben can be positive and hopeful for Johnny's relationship, but not his own. It's almost like Ben is the emotional rock of the Fantastic Four, always there for his family, regardless of how he is suffering at the moment. However, all of that careful, thoughtful character work aside, I am a bit annoyed at this scene. Issue 1 clearly established that the Fantastic Four now remember all of their lives, including what happened before they died. But that era of the Fantastic Four, largely written by Tom DeFalco with art by Paul Ryan, saw Johnny really mature and grow out of this kind of behavior. He would tease Ben, sure, and they would trade insults, but he comes across as way more juvenile here than he honestly has been in years. Even reborn Johnny, who was impulsive, arrogant, and kind of selfish, wasn't this outright childish. Part of this is the thematic return that we're seeing. This isn't just a return of the Fantastic Four to the Marvel Universe, it is also a return to what the Fantastic Four used to be at their conception. Having Sue acknowledge her growth last issue, but then having Johnny dodge his growth here is very uneven, and I don't care for that kind of storytelling. Back at the storage warehouse, which is named Pier 4, by the way, I forgot to mention that earlier. I'll be referring to this location often as The Pier or as Pier 4, so I might as well bring it up now. Reed tucks his son in for the night. It's a super cute scene in which Reed states, as scientifically as possible, that nothing he has ever seen or done compares to the look in his son's eyes when he says that he loves him. Sue slips into the room and hugs her husband. She loves him too. The pair kiss, but that kiss is censored as the panel is rendered in heat signatures. From seemingly nowhere, a voice says simply, "Tragic." Sue is startled by this, but only Sue. Reed hears and sees nothing as Sue watches a figure become visible before them. She demands to know who it is and what it's doing there as she stands up. The Iconoclast, as it identifies itself, is here to null the only thing on Earth that poses a threat to them, namely, Susan Richards. Describing the iconoclast is kinda hard. He has a very Kirby-esque design. He appears male, is bald, and has gray skin. A set of red and gold glasses or goggles rest upon his nose. 2 sets of golden spikes or wings or fins or something extend from his upper back, while golden geometric designs run along his chest and arms. The rest of him is simply black. But as he raises a hand towards Sue, that blackness gives way to crackling energy. Reed asks Sue what exactly is going on, and she gives him the Cliff Notes version before throwing up a shield, blocking the energy attack that the iconoclast fires. Reed scoops up Franklin, allowing Sue to charge forward, angry at this man for threatening her family. She shoves him outside, through a window, and they start to fight. Reed, meanwhile, tells Franklin to stay inside, orders the house to protect the nursery, and it appears to put up a force field, and then he goes to help his wife. Reed can't see the iconoclast. He can't hear it. Hell, he can't even see its footprints. But he still stretches his body out like a large blanket, hoping to restrain the iconoclast long enough for Sue to beat him. But he misses. Watching his mom and dad struggle against something, Franklin pushes a button in his room that sends up a flare, summoning his uncles. We find Ben holding Johnny upside down in a trash can, forcing him to say, "with a cherry on top." They see the flare and immediately take off, whatever animosity between them suddenly unimportant. At the pier, told you I would be referring to it, Sue and Reed have continued to fight. Reed has yet to land a blow, but he is finding that this encounter is just fascinating. Sue, on the other hand, would like a practical solution to this already. Reed scoops her up and puts some distance between them and their attacker, but the iconoclast doesn't let up. He begins to pummel Reed, who appears to have an epiphany regarding their foe. Sue steps back, pushing the iconoclast away, trying to get more information out of him. She is trying not to hurt him because he seems kinda reluctant to hurt them. The iconoclast says that he is reluctant. He doesn't want to do this, but he has to. If she doesn't die, millions of his people will. And Sue immediately sympathizes. She doesn't want anyone to die, at all. Tell them what's going on. The Fantastic Four will help if they can. This is when Ben and Johnny show up, surprised to find Sue fighting nothing. But Reed points out a footprint and tells Johnny to fire in that one spot. His heat dances over the iconoclast, vaguely shaping his body. Now able to see the threat, Ben takes a swing at him, but his fist passes through it. The torch then tries tackling him, figuring that if his heat affected its form, then he can probably hurt it. But the iconoclast phases an arm through the torch and he cries out, describing the sensation like being stabbed by ice. The Invisible Woman steps back in, defending her brother. The iconoclast pushes forward, punching through each new field that the Invisible Woman throws up. She backs away, drawing him off of her family, and out over the nearby river. Just as he nears Sue, she holds up a finger and smiles. Then she drops the force field, holding him up. The iconoclast cries out as he falls into the river. A massive blast of energy erupts from his cloaking device, and the Fantastic Four begin to look for his body. But they find nothing. Reed was sure that the water should only have shorted out his tech, not killed him. And, given how well the iconoclast hid from their detection before, he can't even say with confidence that he is dead. The iconoclast could still be out there, watching. The final panel is presented to us in heat vision once again, implying that either the iconoclast survived, or that another of his kind is watching, waiting. Well, how comforting to know that a new, mysterious enemy not only broke into your home undetected and threatened your wife, but also that he could do it again, at any time. That's great. I would never
No swearing.
Sleep again. I absolutely love how much Reed trusts his wife here. In a world of sci-fi technology, mind control, shapeshifters, and alternate worlds, Any number of things could be happening to Sue when she first hears and sees the iconoclast, but Reed trusts Sue implicitly, and he gathers information in order to help her rather than doubt her. I don't particularly care for this solution to the iconoclast's threat, though. There just isn't enough that's done to justify it. Reed tells us that the iconoclast can't be seen or heard by anyone but Sue. He doesn't even leave footprints. So then why does he leave a print when the Thing and the Human Torch arrive? And if the iconoclast's device renders him invisible and intangible at his control, then why does the water affect it at all? Couldn't he just pass through the water intangibly? He shouldn't be invisible or intangible once it does get shorted out, too, right? Reed has the Human Torch fly out over the river with a high-tech device, stating that, without his tech, they should now be able to find the iconoclast. But they do not, and I don't feel like we're given a good reason why. This ending feels rushed and jumbled and just not very satisfactory. I do think that the mystery of the iconoclast is neat. His general look really evokes old-school aesthetics. I mean, I said Kirby-esque earlier, and you don't get much older Marvel than that. This was done to highlight our return to older times, but with modern-day threats. His reluctance to kill and his desire to save his people will undoubtedly make him a future ally of the Fantastic Four, for sure. I can see it now. He comes back, they stop and catch him, ask him questions, discover some kind of misunderstanding or whatever, then they visit his people, Johnny falls in love with some hot woman, Reed proposes a solution, there's a fight with a bad guy who doesn't trust them about it, and then they save the day. $20 that this is just the general story of the Inhumans, but with another group of dudes as an Inhuman stand-in. And I wasn't sure what an iconoclast even was, so I looked it up hoping for potential clues or some insight into the character. An iconoclast is someone who attacks cherished beliefs or institutions. So Lobdell stretches the meaning a bit here to include a person, but that's fine, I will roll with it, the basic concept still works. But it is no help in discerning anything more about the villain. So we got some good character work, a new villain with a new mystery surrounding them, and some spotlight on how able the Invisible Woman is in the field. That's not a bad issue overall, even if it does kind of end funkily. Next time, the strange return of the Red Ghost and his super apes! Then, in issue 4, author Chris Claremont takes over the writing duties, and he brings a bevy of troubles with him. We've got the Mole Man, the Silver Surfer, Alicia Masters' return, and the towering terror of Terminus. Join me next week for episode 12.2, Harsh Lessons. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me, to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.